let's go ahead and jump into making the case, as we've done for a few coaches. I don't think we have officially done one for Bobby Petrino, but listen, pretty much every single show we've talked plenty about Bobby, but we've done one for James Franklin. We've talked about him. We talked about, of course, like John Gruden was really fun too. And getting into that. Yeah. It's just wild. May have to start doing one for Ed Orgeron, the way things are going. But either way, Alex Golesh is one of those coaches that has had his name mentioned around. In fact, in our voting that you mentioned, Andrew, on InsideArkansas.com for who Razorback fans have wanted, he's been pretty continually in the top 5. Right now, he sits at 4th, but it's a pretty close one. And just to set it up, in case you're wondering, who is Alex Golesh? Well, he's the head coach of South Florida. He was born in the Soviet Union back in the 80s. He's only 41 years old. But he's had an experience as GAs and also a tight end coach for a long time in his career, whether it was at Toledo or also at Illinois. He's at Iowa State. But he was at UCF when Josh Heupel was there in 2020 and then came over with him as the OC, as well as the tight end coach at Tennessee in 2021, 2022, until he took the head coaching position at South Florida. He has gone 7-6 in 2023, as well as 7-6 in 2024. And where it stands right now, he is 6-1 on the season so far. So, guys, Alex Golesh, next Razorback head coach. What do you think?
I think it sounds great, personally. And I know in that NACOS article we talked about Petrino and that factor there. And I think it was Lashley, Golesh, and Ryan Silverfield at Memphis that were mentioned as the other candidates to know there, which was interesting. We haven't talked too much about Silverfield. Maybe he'll be tomorrow. I don't know. But here's my thought, boys. I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can. I do have a lot to say about it, but I feel like if Arkansas had any balls at all, they would hire Alex Golesh and then just equip him with the resources to where he can get a good defensive staff and some playmakers and implement what I think would be an extremely exciting offense to watch. But I just don't know that a shaky administration with Hunter Yurachek and the power players, I don't know that they're going to be doing the high risk, high reward type thing with this hire. And at this stage of his career, that's, I think, where this is at. I think Golesh is damn good. I really do. He's young, only his 3rd season as a head coach. I get it. I understand those things. You mentioned some of the track record, though. He worked under Matt Campbell. I like that. He worked under Josh Heupel, and he was a massive part of that 2022 offense at Tennessee that was like number 1 in the country or whatever. And you can look at, and I know people are going to start doing the Chad Morris thing if they're a hater here, but you can look at where that South Florida program was to where he has it now. It's pretty impressive. I mean, they were 1-11, and he changed the culture. He's made back-to-back bowls. He's won those bowls, and they're a legitimate college football playoff contender this year. It's not crazy to think that they get in there. Like, they beat Boise State. They beat Florida. They've got Memphis this weekend, and maybe he'll kick their ass like he did Eric Morris's, and we can just move Silverfield off of this conversation. But if they do that, and then they beat Jeff Traylor in a couple weeks, like, they'll probably finish 11-1 and win the American. They're going to be sitting there waiting to get selected. So, like, I think he needs to do that, though, to be a legitimate candidate for this Arkansas job, given everything else that you have going on. Because, like, he's got some dudes on that team, some real athletes. So I think about a time period where in-state recruiting in Arkansas sucks and it's not prioritized. And I look at him, and he's very well respected, and he's got deep recruiting ties in Florida. That excites me. 13th in total offense, 7th in scoring offense this year. There's a lot to like there. But again, for me, I think Alex Golesh, like, with resources and support, that's a scary combination that I think could level you up. There's risk that comes with that, but there's 2 things that have me holding back here. One, there are a lot of job openings. There are going to be a lot of job openings that he's going to be connected to. So what does that look like? How appealing is your job compared to others that he's going to be able to consider? But the other thing for me, boys, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but do we really believe if, say, Bobby Petrino wins even a couple more games here with the momentum that he suddenly has, that they are going to tell him to take a hike and go hire a G6 coach that has 3 years of experience and 1 great season? I have a hard time believing it. And so, like, the more Petrino loses, the more realistic I could see a guy like Golesh being if he continues to win. But if Bobby's winning games, I feel like it lowers Golesh's chances every week, whether that's fair or not. I think that's where this is at.
Yeah, I'm with you in that I don't expect the U of A. There's a chance the U of A doesn't even freaking know who Alex Golesh is. Like, that really is possible, that most of like the boosters involved in this decision have no clue, and they will have no clue. They're not going to think outside the box. Perfectly fine. And I'm with you. I just don't think it's a super realistic thing that Arkansas, this is not the type of guy they would typically hire. You also mentioned the Chad Morris thing and like kind of the risk involved when you're taking a chance on a younger up and coming guy who has not coached in the SEC. You are taking a risk. You are saying, hey, this guy has kind of advanced through all these levels of his career. And that's usually how this thing works. You start off as a GA here, you get a position coach job here. Now you're a coordinator here. Now you're a head coach maybe, or you're a coordinator at a big school, or you kind of go up the ladder that way, and you're kind of passing all of these levels. And Alex Golesh, makes no mistake about it, has passed all of the levels he's done. As a position coach, he was great. He was under Matt Campbell at Toledo, and then under Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Tremendous. He goes to Illinois. Great as a position coach. He goes to be a coordinator. Tremendous. Goes to be a head coach at a small school. Tremendous. So it's like he's passing all of these levels, and the bet you would be making is, hey, we're going to give him a even harder task. We're going to let him, he's on the video game. It's time for him to go to that final boss, which is the SEC, and we'll see if he's ready. But there's always that chance that he crashes and burns. But I look at his resume, man, and I don't see anything that gives me pause, honestly, which pretty much with all these candidates, there's something you have to kind of look past of like, oh yeah, it didn't go great for this guy here. I mean, Bobby Petrino's the guy that we're talking about today. With Bobby Petrino's resume, there's a lot great, but there's a lot you look at and you say, oh crap, he flamed out at Louisville. Oh man, wait, he hasn't been recruiting well. Oh dang, he hasn't been in the SEC for a while. He hasn't been to, the NIL. There's things you would look at and be like, man, I don't know. The thing with Alex Golesh, I just haven't seen anything personally from Alex Golesh that I haven't liked. But I also haven't seen him face a 9-game SEC schedule. I also haven't seen him have to compete with Texas A&M for a recruit. And so those are the things that you would have to kind of keep in mind. But I love the resume. I specifically love what he did with Heupel. And by the way, I think Heupel I've always held in high regard. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in the country. Tennessee's offense has not quite been the same since Alex Golesh left. And just think about that for a second. Josh Heupel, who we all agree is like a top 5 offensive mind in college football, his offense has not quite been the same since Golesh left. Now, they've still been good, but like those offenses in 21 and 22 under Tennessee, which, by the way, were year 1 and year 2 of Heupel's era, were unbelievable. I mean, they went in to beat Bama. I mean, Hendon Hooker gets drafted in the first round. Jalen Hyatt gets drafted in the first round. Those guys are out of the NFL, but they got drafted in the first round because of that Tennessee offense. I think he's doing something right there schematically. I think he's doing something right as a program builder. I also think he's doing something right as a recruiter. I think he's doing a great job in Florida. And that roster at South Florida looks like a freaking SEC roster. Like, I don't know how he got those guys there, but like that's a legit SEC team. They've been on the field with an SEC team in Florida and looked like average talent. Like they looked like they were a normal SEC team. I've been very impressed with what he's done. I would like to see him get a big opportunity like this, and make no mistake, he will get a big opportunity in the SEC soon. And I'm very interested to see what his next 10 years of his career look like.
Well, you mentioned his time at Tennessee. Like it's interesting to look at because when he and Heupel came over in 2021, they shattered 8 single season team records of Tennessee, which included points scored, total offensive yards, touchdowns, points after touchdowns made, for what that's worth, total first downs, rushing first downs, as well as fewest interceptions thrown. They threw 3 interceptions in that season. And they improved their scoring offense from 2020 to 2021, 101 spots. They went from being 108th in 2020 to 7th. Now, I know that was a few years ago and you can't just automatically equate, but the point is that in one single year, they went from being a putrid offense to shattering every single record known to man in there. And that's, to me, showcasing, especially because what they did with Hendon Hooker, what they did going into the SEC, that's when Nick Saban was still there. That's when Kirby Smart was still there. Or it was at Georgia. Like, these were still when they had really good teams that they were going to be going up against. They were very effective. And anytime that someone, and you can say this about any coach, but anytime someone brings up a comparison, like if someone says, oh, Chad Morris, okay, well, here's the thing. If you say, look at Eli Drinkwitz, he's doing fairly well over there in Missouri. That dude was like the head coach of Appalachian State for like a second. Like, if people would have been like, oh, you just hired him. Well, it's working out for him. That's the point. Same thing with you could say about Gus Malzahn. when he was then Auburn hired him, he'd been the head coach for one season at Arkansas State, but it worked out. The point is like not every coach you just look at and be like Chad Morris, because if that's the case, some of you may look at James Franklin, for instance, be like, Brett Bielema, it's going to come in and suck. It's like, you can't look at it that way. It's like sometimes these things do work out and sometimes it does end up being successful, but I'm with you. If they hired Alex Golesh, I think it'd be great. I think it would be a really great hire. I think it would be great to see what he's capable of, but there is a lot of uncertainty, but if people who want young, energized, hot names, he would be it. And also offense is kind of his thing, which last time I checked, Arkansas, to me, the best way that they win is having an effective offense. So I think it would be great. I think it would be a great hire if they made it. His wife's from Arkansas. I don't know if you guys heard. She's from Arkansas. Grew up a Razorback fan. But at the end of the day, I just don't know how serious Arkansas would be about hiring him. That's the problem.
That's the problem. Yeah, I think we all agree that there's a level of excitement. He very well, if I was to look at all of these the hot shot coordinators or the G6, coaches, who's going to be the next big thing, Golesh would be at the top of my list. I have him above John Summerall and other guys. I really think he's good. It comes down to one question for me. Matter of fact, let me ask you guys the question. If Bobby Petrino wins 2 or more games, does anything short of a college football playoff appearance for Alex Golesh get him above Bobby in the pecking order in the eyes of the decision makers at the University of Arkansas? I think no.
I would say no as well. And that's a very important distinction in the eyes of the decision makers at Arkansas who very routinely make bad decisions. And I'm not saying that hiring Bobby would be a bad decision. I'm just saying I think we are firmly, like the three of us, we agree that how we feel about Alex Golesh is just not the same as how the U of A is going to feel and kind of what they would view in this. Because you got to think about it, us saying who we want is very different. The U of A, who's sitting here watching the fan base gawk over Bobby Petrino and knows that nostalgia factor's there, they know that when they hired Bobby as the OC, it totally dominated ticket sales, and it's a huge reason why the stadium is still full. It's going to be really hard for that university to look at it and say, okay, we can pay Bobby, who has coached in the SEC, and we kind of know what we got here, maybe less of a risk in terms of ticket sales and all that. We could hire him for half the price, literally. Maybe not quite, but Golesh, that's the thing, is what it would take to hire Golesh is you have to compete with Florida and Auburn. And I just think the U of A looks at that and says, nah, don't want to do it. I would also say, and I'm not knocking the chat, I'm just observing the chat. If you look at the chat, our chat today, a lot of them are just hey, we could never get Golesh. Let's just hire Bobby because we can't get a guy like that. We're never going to be able to have the money. We're not going to be able to fund the resources and all that. And so if your fan base is already saying that, how are you as the U of A? You're not going to try and prove your fan base wrong. You're going to accept that as okay, yeah, we can afford to just take the easy route here.
To that point right there, that's the other question I have here about this is, if they hire Bobby, we know that it's going to come with a good amount of financial support. That's the biggest part of this for me is it doesn't matter who the hell you hire. You've got to have the resources in place. Bobby probably will get that. A Rhett Lashley probably would get that. What an Alex Golesh? Have they done enough homework? Are they familiar enough to drum up that type of support? Because it's one thing to pay enough to get him or whatever, but then put him in a position to succeed. I just feel like they would be more willing to do that with some of these other guys as opposed to him, even though I disagree because I don't know if Golesh is my number one. He's absolutely in my top 3. I think he'd be a hell of a hire. But if we're trying to predict where the U of A is at and what they might do, that's where I think he falls a little bit short personally.
Well, I was looking at his contract for what it's worth. He's getting paid $2.6 million a year at USF. And he has a salary pool of over $5 million. His agent, as of this moment, is not Jimmy Sexton. So, positives.
Huge.
Yeah, that's big. But, it's something to where I think someone's going to hire him. It's one of those coaches, just a few of these, but it's someone's going to hire him. Someone's going to take a risk on. I don't know if it's going to be this year in this coaching search. Could be next year. I don't know, but someone's going to hire him. And I'm not saying that he has to be the guy in order for Arkansas to succeed, but it is one of those things. I just have a feeling that no matter what, whoever does hire him, if it's not Arkansas, that you're going to look at him and be like, man, that guy's pretty good. wherever he's going to be. But again, it's not saying that Arkansas is going to fail no matter who they hire, because they can have other coaches that are really good too. Just saying that I don't think there's going to be a time where you look at that and be like, ooh, dodged a bullet on Alex Golesh. I just don't see him being that type of coach.
Well, like, listen, Ole Miss took a risk when they hired Lane Kiffin. Contrary to popular belief, I know now it looks like an obvious thing. Lane Kiffin was a guy that had a ton of baggage at that point in time, and he was coming off of a good run at FAU after he'd been a coordinator under Nick Saban. But like, Lane Kiffin had his fair share of risk involved. I just don't think Ole Miss looks back at that summer of 2019 or that winter of 2019, and they're like, "Oh man, that was such a big risk. You know, we had to pay more money." And so I think that's like, if we're now giving our opinion here, like, I just think it's such a weird thing for the U of A that, like, they don't seem to want any of these other options. They don't like the idea of taking a risk, and the idea of maybe doing something that might be scary or unknown or whatever is just so far not on their radar. And I just think that sucks, man, because I think if you go back to 2019, Arkansas didn't want to take a risk. And it's like, you've had to now make so many more harder decisions since then because you didn't want to try and take a risk. And I just think Arkansas is having such a tunnel vision here of like, hey, let's just hire Bobby, and we couldn't get anyone else, so let's not even think about it at all. And I just think you have to be prepared now, since you did this in 2019. You have to now be prepared for, if Alex Golesh takes a job somewhere else, you're always going to be compared to him. And if John Summerall takes a job somewhere else, you're always going to be compared to him. If James Franklin takes the Auburn job, you're always going to have that as a comparison, especially, we think about that same year where Drinkwitz got hired, Kiffin got hired, Mike Leach got hired at Mississippi State. Those guys were always compared to Arkansas. And so it's like, if you're the U of A, you don't have to take a risk. You don't have to really get in and make this thing dirty, especially since you were the first job to open up and had a fresh start on everyone. But now if you're going to do the safe route, you need to be prepared to always be looking at all these other schools and comparing your program, good or bad.
What makes me nervous about Golesh is because I don't think Florida will hire him. They probably should, but I don't think they will after the Napier deal. I think they're going to go for a name and just try to make that happen with something more proven. It's the dominoes of that makes me nervous. Like, if Kiffin takes the Florida job, what if Ole Miss then pull Golesh over there? Or if Drink gets one of these jobs that he's connected to, and then Mizzou pulls him over there. That's the kind of thing that will piss me off, because I could see Arkansas being, like I said, they had some balls about them. This might be something that they would do, and they go a different direction, and then somebody is bold and they do it, and then he winds up being like the next Dan Lanning or something. And you got to see him every year. That's my biggest fear with this Golesh situation. I think Summerall is going to Auburn. So
yeah.
Which, by the way, as an Auburn hater, which I'm not an Auburn hater, but they're in our conference. Summerall hater and an Auburn hater, like, I think Summerall would be getting fired in 3 years.
I mean,
And that would be a dream scenario for me.